The coach is a leader. He is the number one leader. That's who you look up to. That's who you listen to. Yes, all the players have their input, but the coach is there for a reason. The coach is there to coach, right?
Welcome back to the Substantiate podcast. I'm the host, William Glasser, and this week I have a bit of a different episode coming your way. We're not talking about a hypothetical sports matchup like usual. Today we're going to be talking with Justin Brien, and we talked about mental health and some addictions and how that's impacted athletes and sports, and also egos and personalities and how they can play out when creating a team. And I thought that, that's relevant to other episodes where I draft teams. So I thought that would be a fun thing to talk about today. And before we get into my conversation with Justin, as always, I really, really appreciate it when you share this with a friend and you go and tell them why you think they'll enjoy this. There's now around 30 episodes in the back catalog that you or your friends can go back and listen to and catch up on. A bunch of hypothetical matchups from Jordan versus Curry in golf to Marvel superheroes playing ice hockey. So there's plenty of different topics there in the back catalog that you can share with someone. And of course, you can find our social medias links down in the show notes. And just like last week, if you wouldn't mind taking 1 minute and filling out this feedback form I have in the show notes, you'll see it down there in bold. And this just helps me to know what you, the audience, want to hear, what you don't want to hear. And that way I can keep creating the best possible episodes each week. And so I'm not going to take up much more time, and let's hear from Justin. Today, I'm joined by Justin Brien. How are you today, Justin?
I'm good, William. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. And so you have an interesting background with sports and mental health. Do you want to give the listeners, as we get in here, some context about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Justin Brien. I'm a 36-year-old from Canada. And, I am a mental health advocate, an inspirational speaker, and a professional executive coach. But to be able to put those kind of titles in front of my name, I kind of battled with a 16-year-long battle with addiction and kind of a lifelong battle with my mental health. And that being said I was kind of an all-around kind of athlete growing up. But when I was younger, I was very small. I mean, I'm 6'3", 230 now. But in high school and junior high, I was a late bloomer. I didn't grow until grade 11. I had very low self-confidence, low self-esteem, low self-worth, and I always compared myself to other people. So in sports, I was good, but I wasn't as good as my friends were. So growing up, I only made 3 hockey rep teams out of minor hockey. I mean, I went to play junior B hockey and I got probably around over 100 points in 100 games. But the thing was, when I played junior hockey, I pretty much played as an alcoholic. I was using alcohol to build up my self-confidence and my self-esteem. And we all know it's a fake confidence. But in high school, I always compared myself to other people and, I wanted to be other people. So I got out of high school and kind of quit hockey, quit all sports, and went down that path of addiction, which kind of led me to where I am today, to advocating for mental health, coaching people around personal development, but really just trying to make people understand what mental health can do to you and its capabilities when you're not really paying attention to it. And, this is kind of the first sports podcast I've been on. But I know the kind of the repercussions of not having your mental health in check, because like when I played, I didn't really want to. I played hockey just because I could. I didn't really want to be there. I got top 10 in scoring and in penalty minutes, but it wasn't very fun for me. I wanted to quit. And when you're not in it for the right reasons, you can't really be as successful as you could have been.
Yeah, and mental health is definitely an important thing in sports. Different personalities and obviously different things you do with personal development, many athletes go through similar kinds of things. And so one thing, and obviously you said this is your first sports podcast, and this isn't your regular Talk Sports podcast, so I thought that might be interesting to talk about some things involving building a team and different personalities, and then we can touch more on recovering from addictions and other mental health stuff in the second half of this podcast. So when you're building a team, and it sounds like you've been in a few different locker rooms and hockey teams and some other sports when you were younger. So from your experience and just looking at other examples, but what are some issues you have seen before in looking at different, whether it's conflicting personalities or someone's shy and someone else is too loud, and just different kinds of comparisons, I guess, like that?
Yeah, well, as you say, I've been in a lot of different dressing rooms, but I think the most one that stands out is someone that doesn't want to be a team player. Someone that doesn't want to do stuff with the team. I found the most successful teams are the ones that kind of do things together. Like I played on one team where we all did kind of stuff together. But then my last year, I played on a team where we were kind of spread out. We had the older and younger players. And we didn't have team parties. We didn't really have a lot of team functions. I mean, we were a good team, but we didn't really do much together. So the only bonding we pretty much had was, at the hockey rink. And, for teams to be successful, it's really good to bonding outside of the actual sport, right? And like getting to know each other's personal likes, seeing how they're doing in life. What do you like to do? How are you feeling? Like even stuff like that, being there for support with each other. I think that's probably one of the biggest things.
Yeah. And I mean, last year, maybe 2 years ago, I read a book, Mission 27. It was about the 2009 Yankees. And in that locker room, there were plenty of veterans who had already won several championships before. And they did have those kind of fun bonding, different parties because they're rich professional athletes and all kinds of things that definitely contributed to some of the bonding there. And I've also found that, at least for me, playing on school sports teams, that it's always fun to play with people you already know and are already friends with. And so then when it comes to that and more professional sports, and a little like I was alluding to with the Yankees and working together, and just in different sports, I guess, in general, what kinds of character traits can be important or work together? Like, does everyone need to be a team, like all a team player, or should there be different personalities to balance out?
Oh, definitely there should be different personalities. And you know what? If you're going to get one and the same personality, you're going to clash. Like in sports, you're going to have quiet leaders. Leaders that just, the way they play, the way they show up, the way they prepare, and that's how pumps people up. Like then you're going to have vocal leaders, the guys that are the raw guys, the guys that get people together. And you got to have a mix of that, because if you have the same person, well, it just seems a little bit dull. But, when you have every single player buying into the system, playing the same system, playing the team game, buying into the role that they play on that team, it's going to make the team better.
And with conflicting personalities, that kind of thing, whose job is it usually? Well, I'm going to ask this in two questions. What usually happens, and then what is the best way to handle it? If there is some kind of altercation in a team, and do usually a coach or manager clean that up, or is it usually a teammate and other players?
Well, I like to think that most things are they get resolved internally. So personally, what I've seen is, it works best if it's, the assistant captains or the captains, but you know what? You don't have to have an A or C to be a leader on a team. Mm-hmm. But it's better to deal with it team first. And then if the team can't deal with it, if it's bigger than the team, then you go to management. And if it's bigger than management, maybe the league has to handle something. But it's usually better to handle it internally, whether it's a men's team, women's team, handle it within each other. Try not to let it get out, because the social media kind of blows everything up. But most your Yeah, you're a team. Handle it internally with each other, and if it doesn't, then you go to the coach, and then the coach would go to the management. But it's definitely better to handle it. Get the leaders of the room. That's when you have your team meetings, like because you can have those team meetings without personnel in them, right?
Hmm.
So handle it, with a team. So you can come up with, hey, what's going on? Why is this person acting like this? What can we do about it as a team? It's better to do it as a team than as an individual.
Yeah, and two examples are coming to my mind where it didn't go down like that. And I guess the first one would be a couple weeks ago, the New York Mets. They had some kind of thing with Francisco Lindor and one other player, and I didn't see the video of it, but supposedly there was some kind of like pointing and not physical fighting, but something with words. And then afterwards, they went to the media in their press conference and they say, "Oh, I thought I saw a rat, and I'd never seen a New York City rat before, so I wanted to, like just point it out." And then the other player said, "Oh, it was a raccoon." And granted, that's all inside, like the walkway between their clubhouse and dugout, so not sure how a raccoon is necessarily getting in there, but then there was this whole thing with a raccoon, and then as soon as the media gets involved, it gets a lot more complicated, and like you were saying, things get blown out of proportion, but still, yeah, I mean, it sounded like they were trying to cover up and, maybe they solved something internally, but definitely it seemed like there was something else in there.
Yeah, well, you know what? They're grown men. It doesn't mean that they're always going to act like grown men. You're going to have they're playing for, this is a sport that they love. They're playing, it's for competition. Yes, do they get paid millions of dollars? Do their bonuses apply to how they perform? Yeah, but still, they're playing for competition. There's going to be emotions involved. Like it's pretty hard, to always keep your emotions in check when you have that level of compete, right? Like and then you have social media. Their job is to out everything. It's to put you in the spotlight, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And I like when I watch these guys and I see how the media portrays them, like that's got to be rough on a guy. I don't care if anyone says, "Oh, they're professional," but still, if you have your life put in the media and you just get people tearing you down, you can lose it. Like, okay, for instance, I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. Mark Scheifele, got suspended. I think he should have been suspended. I would have thought, even if I wasn't a Habs fan, just because this is new hockey and we're trying to take down the injuries, right? He didn't go for the puck first. Mm-hmm. Would I have done that back in the day? I don't know. I might have, right? I might have taken that hit, but they're trying to eliminate that. Anyways, he got suspended, and people are not only going after him, but they're going after his family, right? They're messaging his family and his brothers and sisters. I think are getting picked on at school. Like, there's going to be emotions involved. And Francis Lindor, and they could have a disagreement, but they're trying to keep it in house, right? They want to deal with it as a team because not only are you a team, but you're a family. So you're going to have them trying to internalize it, but you're going to have the social media trying to pull it out. But then you're going to have the fans involved trying to get their 2 cents in. So it's really important to keep it internalized.
Yeah, and I think it can definitely be healthy to go through that, whether it's early in the season and build, then come back stronger. And one thing that I noticed coming out of that one specific situation was most people were saying, "Oh, okay, they're having an argument, and that's a big deal." But another way to look at it is, okay, they already had worked something out and there was some kind of miscommunication between whether they were going to tell the media that it was a rat or a raccoon, but they were already starting to patch it up, and it obviously wasn't that big of a deal. No one demanded to be traded or anything. Mm-hmm. No one said anything bad publicly about someone else, so there's also a level of professionalism there, but there's definitely different ways to look at things, and social media rarely helps with it.
No, their job is to make a story out of it, right? And if you have no stories, you make a story, which is very unfortunate because, this is people's lives, right? I know they paid the big bucks, but it's still their livelihood, right? And it must be hard seeing your face plastered in a bad situation, as the enemy almost on your own team. That being said, some guys may have a poor attitude, right? And they might need an adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's up to the team to do that. And even if it's just one person that pulls another person aside, like I said, do it as a team. But it's up to one of the leaders to say, if one person's acting out, maybe you pull that person to the side and say, hey, listen, this is how the team feels, or this is how you've been acting. Do you think this is a way you should be acting? Is there a better approach to this? It's just questioning and not trying to fix the person or even give them advice. You can be like, hey, question them. Right. And that's the thing with life coaching is it's not trying to give them advice. It's asking them questions for them to get to the answer that they're looking for. Right.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, to lead them into it. You're not telling them what to do. You're trying to come to something together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then there's those times where you sit down, shut up, and do your job.
Well, so it's interesting you bring that up, because then the other example I was thinking of, which is a little bit different, but the Chicago White Sox, they hired a new manager last offseason named Tony La Russa, and he hadn't managed in a few years. He's 76 years old now, and some people said he's too out of touch with the game, and things have changed since he was last a manager, and he plays too old style. And then the Chicago White Sox, best rookie, Yermin Mercedes, the Yerminator, he goes out and he swings at a 3-0 pitch, and it was a position player pitching, and which is one of the unwritten rules in baseball that people get all annoyed about. I don't care for them, but obviously Tony La Russa did, and that story, they also took it to the media, except that one derailed a little more than the first situation did with a rat or raccoon. And, they said that, they were going to have a talk with him, and, they were going to figure things out. But what happens when the coach and the players aren't on the same page about some stuff like that? Like, they were already winning the game, and what happens when they're out of touch?
Well, then you really have the drama. If the coach is a leader, he is the number one leader. That's who you look up to. That's who you listen to. Yes, all the players have their input, but the coach is there for a reason. The coach is there to coach, right? Let's say in golf, Tiger has a hitting coach. He has a putting coach. And everybody has a coach, right? And when they're not on the same page, that's when you start to lose trust. But with that unwritten rule, there's two ways to look at it. I mean, if they're winning and they're winning by a lot, is there a need to hit that home run? If that guy hits that home run, is there a chance he's going to make a bonus, right? If he gets a certain amount of RBIs or a certain amount of home runs, that could be that that could get his family more money. You know what? And then you look at the team. Well, you should have brought better pitchers. Your team should have been batting better. Like that unwritten rule of kind of stuff like that. It's, it's okay. Maybe instead of complaining about what they should have done, maybe you should have done better. I remember playing in it was a rec hockey tournament, and this team was had ex-pros, and it was a 3-on-3. We had 4 players. They had 12 or something, and they were crushing us. And then they started to take it easy on us. And then I went to their bench. I'm like, listen, I'd rather get pumped than you guys quit playing because we suck that bad. Right? It's, take it as a learning lesson. Maybe they should have prepared. Yeah, they're having an off day, but it's different. They have 162 games in a schedule. Maybe you should take it easy on them. Personally, me, no. Hey, we should have prepared better.
Yeah. And then this leads to a different question, and this one also relates to the NBA a little bit, but should teams build their teams around a coach or find a coach that fits well with their players?
Oh, that's a tough one. Well, you see a lot of these days, it seems like the NBA players are coaching themselves almost. But I think you build it around the coach, because the coach will get the players to play together, right? Like, look at Jordan. He was leading the league in scoring all this time. Then, Phil Jackson got him to buy into, hey, you don't need to score this many points. Mm-hmm. Then you bring in the supporting cast. So I believe, personally, you should build it around the coach. and then the coach should learn the players and then get them to buy into the roles that they need to play. You can be a superstar in one league or on another team and be a role player on another team, right? Like look at Rodman, just go out and block, get that ball back, right? So I think it's building it around the coach, and getting the players to buy into it. But when you're saying that the coach and the team are on two different pages, well, that's when you start to lose the trust. So it's bringing in a coach that has a good reputation of having good conversations with their players.
Yeah, and with the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, they basically told management to hire Steve Nash. And what can be some of the problems if the players themselves choose a coach compared to someone more external like the general manager? Or is it a good thing for the players to choose a coach that they bond with?
Well, I would like to think that the general manager it makes the final decision. I would like to think that he goes to his players and asks, who do you like? Who would you suggest? And then he looks at the candidates and then picks the best one that he thinks is suitable. But I mean, when you have your star players thinking, hey, this guy, like these guys, these proven winners, NBA champions, like this guy, well, maybe, and he's a proven NBA champion. I mean, didn't win anything as a coach yet, but it's that shows a lot of trust between a GM and players. And I bet players really like that. It might even make them play harder. But when it comes down to it, I would like to think that the GM makes the decision. But when he takes in effect, hey, this is who these guys want, well, maybe it's good to take their opinion too, right?
Yeah, and another instance of that is Damian Lillard and the Portland Trail Blazers lost last week, or maybe it was last weekend, and Damian Lillard already said publicly that he wants Jason Kidd to come coach the Trailblazers. And Jason Kidd, I'm pretty sure he said that he doesn't plan on leaving the Lakers to go for a head coaching job compared to an assistant coach. And if they hire a coach that isn't Jason Kidd, and you know that you're not your top player's number one choice, how are you supposed to deal with that and try to come in? You already know that there's some kind of cold blood going on here, and you got to somehow try to make this work and rebuild this relationship that already started on the wrong foot.
Well, yes, I would like you'd think and like to believe that he's just going to be professional. You know what? I had a hockey coach say to me once, you can't always have your cake and eat it too. Yeah, he publicly said, I'd like Jason Kidd. Okay, well, you don't always get what you want. You're in a league, you have a boss, you play as a team. You're not always going to get the coach that you want. I very rarely expect people get the coaches that they want in any professional sport. I think he's going to be just fine. It's Jason Kidd himself said no. So the only person Lillard can be upset about is Jason, right? He can't be mad at his GM. So I'd like to think that whoever they bring in, Lillard's he's a professional athlete, he's a hell of a player, and he's just gonna play hard for himself and the team and the ownership and his fans.
Yeah, I think that probably makes sense to have the relationship with the general manager there. The general manager isn't just someone upstairs making decisions. He is someone that the players should be on the same page with what they want for the team and what they can succeed with.
Yeah, and well, you know what? I'm a coach and a speaker, but I also still I manage at a restaurant too. And you know what? As a manager, I always seek my employees, input. Like, hey, what do you think we should do here? What do you think we should do here? Ultimately, it will be my decision, but by including them, they start to feel like they're heard, right? And then they start to be like, okay, this guy really cares of what my opinion is. And maybe sometimes their idea might even be better than mine, and we'll just go with their idea. And so that's how you establish the trust with them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. All right, now just give me 1 minute to interrupt here and tell you about Built Bar. You've probably heard me talk about them by now, but they are the best protein bar I have ever had. They come in 9 amazing base flavors, and that's coconut, almond, mint brownie, salted caramel, raspberry, peanut butter brownie, coconut, cookies and cream, double chocolate and cherry barcia. There is something for everyone here. You can go onto their website and you can look at all the nutrition facts if you want to, but in summary, these things, they're high protein. They're low in calories, low in fat. They have few carbs. They have almost no sugar, just 4 grams, compared to some other protein bars that have upwards of 20. Talking about you, Gatorade. But anyway, some have nuts, some don't. They've still got plenty of fiber and around 17 grams of protein. These things, they're amazing. And on their website, you can go and see what these bars look like, because they're covered in 100% real chocolate on the insides. Each one is a little different, but it's got the whey protein in there. And yeah, and I also have a great deal for you. You can use code SUBSTANTIATE, SUBSTANTIATE. Save yourself 10% off any product on the website. That could be their little Built Bar cooler, Built Bites, just miniature ones, Built Boost for some immune defense, Built Broth, and Built Go. You can get anything you want there, and you're saving yourself some money, so that's always great also. And so when you go and use that, you can also take a look also on their website. They've got an amazing website, what can I say? They have 2 comparisons with their bars. They compare them compared to other protein bars on the market, and you can see how much better they are there. And they're so good they taste like candy bars. They also compare them to candy bars, where they're just as good tasting and also delicious. So you can go check that out, BuiltBar.com. Save yourself 10% off with code SUBSTANTIATE. All right, so now we'll transition a bit more into the mental health side of things. And this is really interesting, specifically over the last 2 years, ever since sports came back in summer of 2020. And so in most sports, they switched to a bubble format where you're effectively completely isolated, or the NBA was just one location in Orlando. They had very strict rules about what you could and couldn't do. Or the NHL, I think the NHL might have been even stricter. They had 2 locations, but it was basically just the hotel, gym, ice. And so I guess we'll start there. So how does being in that confined scenario, no fans, you're not with your family for a long time, you've just got your teammates and your opponents and your coaches, how does that change a player's performance?
Well, that could be big for anybody. I mean, for me personally, I isolated for the longest time. So when COVID hit, I was like, "Do you want me to go back and isolate?" No problem. However, I got to isolate with my family, so I got to spend time with my girlfriend and our son. That being said, being away and being confined to when you're not an introvert, you're more of an extrovert. It could be even tougher. So you're taking away. Some guys use their families as coping mechanisms. That's their life is their family. They do it so they can make money for their family. When your family's not there to support you, and just to touch them or kiss them or hug them and just chat with them face to face, it can be really hard on a guy. Those guys are, for the ones that made it to the finals, they're there for 2 months, like away from their family. But I mean, you look at guys that work on the rigs, like we're in Canada, we got rigs everywhere, right? Like oil rigs, and those guys leave for periods of time. And I know I did it for a little bit, and it was tough. Like you're gone, and we just did it for 2 weeks. You do like a 2-week stint, right? Or I was gone once for a month. I actually had a buddy who was gone for a month as well, or a month or 2 months. He might have been gone for 2 months, and he had a little kid. And when he got back, he had a beard, but his son didn't even recognize him. So that can be very wearing and tearing on somebody. I mean, yeah, you're getting paid to be away, but when you don't have those people to lean on, I mean, you have your team, but you can't have the same conversations with your team as you can with your family.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it can take a toll on your mental health, and it's something that they had to do to be able to pay their bills and be able to make money. But I mean, some of them did it. Or I mean, I'm pretty sure they all like knew that by them playing hockey, it helped a lot of other people, right? Or playing basketball, or right, because people were isolated to their house. So what are they going to do? They're going to watch TV, and they still get to watch on their favorite teams. So I mean, it still helps out people as well by them being in that bubble. But that bubble must have been hard.
And then what, if any, ways can players look to sort of cope without their coping mechanism? If you were saying before that players rely on their families in those ways to talk about things like that, and so they don't have it, and who or what can they do to still get that emotional support they need?
Talk about it. One of the biggest things in mental health is if you are struggling, talk about it. Get to know everybody on your team, right? They could go to, I'm going to hang out with this guy this day. I'm going to hang out with this guy. I'm going to get to know everything about him. Let's say as in hockey, you got Russians, Europeans coming over. Learn some of their language. Learn about some of their culture. Get to know somebody that you don't really know, but also, start up some hobbies. Read a book, learn something, listen to podcasts. Gratitude every morning. Be like, okay, you know what, I'm in this bubble, but what is the good things I'm going to get out of this bubble? I could get a championship. People at home get to watch us play, so they might be happier. We're role models to little kids. They're going to see that we're coming together as a team. Practice that gratitude, because one of the biggest things in recovery is gratitude, being grateful for the things that you do have in your life.
Yeah, and I think that especially in this scenario, because it is a short-term thing, everyone knows that, 5 years from now, hopefully we'll be right back to where we were. And, right now we're still feeling the lingering effects of everything that's happened over the last year and a half. But, eventually things will be back to normal. And knowing that if I had a nickel for every time that someone said, oh, when life gets back to normal, I'm going to always appreciate this, you'd be rich. And I feel like people say that now all the time, like, no longer taking for granted those little things. And that's definitely a thing to keep in mind. And as things reopen in different parts of the world, it's nice to have. And the first time you go back and do something, and then as you do it over and over again, whether it's, going out to eat somewhere or all those things that you couldn't do for a while, and especially here in Canada, but, and that changes your perspective on everything afterwards. So knowing that it's short term. And then also one thing you said, maybe speaking in some of your teammates' languages. Last night, being Sunday night, when in the Yankees versus Red Sox game, Alex Cora, in a position where he wanted to talk to his pitcher to give an update about a pinch hitter coming in Rougned Odor. So he goes out to Matt Barnes, and instead of sending his pitching coach out, who only speaks English, and Matt Barnes, who I guess natively speaks Spanish, and so instead of sending out the pitching coach, Alex Cora, who also speaks Spanish, goes out and talks to his player in Spanish, in his own language. And on the broadcast, Alex Rodriguez, another Spanish speaker, talked about that and how much it can mean to a player to hear that in your native language. So that's definitely a big deal.
Yeah, when someone makes the effort to not cater to you, but acknowledge that, hey, you're comfortable with this. I mean, it's a big deal, right? If you go out of your way to do something for someone, that even as little as that, it could be big to him, right?
Yeah,
it shows a little bit of solidarity.
And then another thing that's gone on for not just athletes over the last year and a half now is with things being closed and not being able to see people or do things. And there have been, a number of ways that people have coped with things. And this isn't exclusive to this time, but with addictions and other things that could require rehab and different things. And I mean, this you could talk about different parts of this for a really long time, but honing in on sports a little bit, and like I mentioned in our pre-show chat before we started recording, CC Sabathia, he was a pitcher for the Yankees. He was overweight and was really addicted to alcohol, and then eventually his wife stepped in and they made a documentary about it, and he decides to go to rehab, and he comes back and has another decent year or two. And what are some of the biggest things performance-wise that going to rehab can change for a player?
Well, I know I went to rehab twice. The first time I went with the wrong mindset. I needed to get out of town, and I went there. I trained twice a day, ate 6 times a day. I wasn't really present. I got out. I'm like, I'm not done drinking forever. But the next time I went with the power of why. I went, I have a son. I need to get better. So then I went, and then I asked instead of why did I drink, or no, instead of quitting drinking, I went, why do I drink? Well, it's because I'm depressed. Why am I depressed? Because this factor, this factor, this factor. Okay, well, what am I going to do to get better? And in rehab, they teach you things on gratitude, mindfulness. Like, there's a difference between mindful and mindful. So there's mindful where you're just thinking and thinking and thinking. You have thoughts just all up in your head and you can't control it. Then there's mindful where you're walking and you're taking in the scenery, the smells. They teach you things like that, or positive affirmations, I am statements like I am recovery, I am strong, stuff like that. But then we go over guilt and shame. Like, the difference between guilt and shame is guilt is you did something bad, and shame is you are bad. And when you start labeling yourself as bad, which I'm sure a lot of players can do, right? You start messing up, but you're not just messing up at a pickup game. You're messing up on the world stage. And then you start to feel the shame starts to creep in, right? And that Marc-Andre Fleury, I think, went through, a little bit of mind issues there, and until he got a sports psychologist, right? Because I think he was on top of his game, then he kind of slipped a little, right? And now he's back on top again at 36 years old. But they also teach you on anger. So it's a lot of it is, and forgiveness, acceptance and forgiveness. So a lot of it's all on the mindset and, accepting things that have happened in your life, forgiving them, even though you don't have to like it, but you got to forgive it for you so you can move on. But a lot of people use alcohol as a crutch, as a coping mechanism, because they don't know how to cope with it in a sober lifestyle. Right? Because you get all those unwanted thoughts in your head. Well, how am I going to deal with it? Well, I'm going to drink.
Yeah, and so sort of sticking on with CC Sabathia a little bit, he and his wife, they had recorded parts of his last season and documented parts of his rehab journey. It's now on HBO under the grapefruit tree, also on Crave here in Canada. But and he talks about a lot of that and how, he'd just pop a beer and on the car on the way to a game if he wasn't pitching that day, or just any time, because he relied on it so much. And even if it isn't alcohol, is it bad in sports for a player to rely on one thing so much, or even coming back to the family? Is it bad that that's the only way that some players could deal with things, or is it really that important to have multiple ways to deal with things?
It's very important to have multiple ways to deal with things. Back with Sabathia, drinking on the way to games, I dislocated my 2 fingers, my ring finger and my pinky finger, and I ended up having to play that day. So I thought we were going to have an AP, an affiliate player, come up, and we couldn't find any. And I was drinking all day, and I ended up playing in the game pretty drunk, and not pretty drunk, but definitely buzzed. And I know one of the players, I knew him because he was from around my area, He's like, "You drunk?" And he could smell it on my breath. But I felt like Superman out there. And I was drinking at nights, like between games and even in the playoffs. And the owner caught me, and man, was he upset with me. I couldn't control it, and I needed that alcohol. I needed it. I craved it. With that being said, I didn't know how to cope. But yes, it is very important to have multiple coping mechanisms, because that one coping mechanism might not be there. Like you say, you got your family. Well, if you're on the road, you don't have your family. I mean, you can call them, yes, but it's definitely building up a support network. So having a friend, having a counselor, a doctor, or your family you can call up, writing in a journal, practicing gratitude, practicing affirmations, being mindful, listening to a podcast. Like there's meditation. It is very important to have a plethora of tools in your toolbox to be able to deal with it, because for one day one might not work, so then you got to try something else. Like look at a pitcher. How many pitches do they have? Most of them have 3 or 4, right? If one's not working, throw another one. So it's, if you have this one's working for you, yeah, you can lean on it, but it's definitely better to have more than one.
Yeah, that's a great analogy to pitching and having different pitches and for different days. And one thing that sort of going along with this analogy, and that in baseball and then taking it back to mental health, but so I know that one thing that I've heard from former players speaking is in scouting reports, if they see that, oh, this player that we're facing is a terrible hitter against the curveball, but he's a great hitter against a fastball, but the pitcher says, well, he's never faced my fastball before, so he doesn't know how good my fastball is. But then what winds up happening is, oh, well, I'm just one of the other couple hundred pitchers in the league, and he still got a hit off of that. And so then taking that back into mental health, I guess you could call that denial or
ego,
and
or a competitiveness. I mean, you want to think your fastball is a little bit better. You know what? That guy, there could be a difference in fastball and placement, right? Like I'm not a baseball expert by any means, but I'm guessing that some guy can place it higher or lower or outside or inside a little better than the other guy. Then you got the competitiveness. Hey, he thinks he's a fastball hitter. Well, here's my fastball. See what he can do with this. Like, what was it? R.A. Dickey, and all he did was throw knuckleballs. Like, that's all he did. And he still struck people out. It's insane.
Yeah. So then I guess egos and mental health and on a team, and I guess this will be the final thing we talk about here. But so when you have a large ego like that, or some kind of resistance to whether it's getting help, or sometimes you don't even know, like you might be fine, but when you do talk about those things, whether it's as a team or with a counselor or something, sometimes you don't even realize how much it can help just the way you think, and that could be as simple as falling asleep easier at night and being more well rested. And so when it comes to ego in that sense, what are some ways that, again, whether it's some sort of mental health counselor or a coach looking out for his player, what are some ways that they might use to say, hey, you know what, why don't you give this a shot? Why don't you, what we're saying, it might actually be true?
Yeah, well, I lived by that man. Unfortunately, I lived by the man up stigma. So for one, when I was thinking, I questioned myself, was I an alcoholic? I said, no, I'm too smart for this. I literally said that. I'm too good to be an alcoholic. When it came to depression, I said, you got to man up. Depression is an excuse. It's for the weak. Well, boy, was I wrong. The first part of it is you got to admit the problem, right? And then after you admit it, you got to accept it to yourself, and then you got to ask for help. And then when it comes to trying to help somebody, the best thing you can do is not try to fix them, but listen to them. So listen, not to fix or give advice. However, that doesn't mean you can't give them options. So if you're going to someone who's struggling with their mental health, look up a counselor, then give them their number. Don't force them to call. We in Canada here, we have the crisis line number, and every province is different, but you can give them, here's a crisis line number, or just listen. Hey, do you want to talk? Be an ear for somebody, but be able to have those available resources or options open to give them to them. And when they feel comfortable, they'll reach out. but just let them know that you're here for them. And if they need anything else, you're an ear to hear.
Yeah, that's great. So thank you for coming on today and talking about all that with me, coming from team dynamics to how players change through rehab and through their different problems, and being open to different ways to improve your mental health. And I guess, do you have any last thoughts about this, and where can listeners find you on social media, or is there a place that they can find other podcasts you've been on?
Yeah, well, to leave with something, if you want to maximize your potential, take care of your mental health. Take care of you first. So I do coach people in personal development. And one of the hardest things they do, pretty much each client, the hardest thing for them was to put themselves first, right? They always want to be there for the family. But what people don't realize is when you put yourself first, you take care of your health, you can actually be better for other people. Because let's say you're at 50% because you're angry, you're sad, you're confused, and you're not figuring out why you feel like that. Well, can you be 100% for somebody else, right? So when it comes to mental health, talk to your mental health. Don't put it aside. Pay attention to it, because for me, I probably could have played better hockey than I did, but alcohol and my mental health took over, and it won, right? So take care of your mental health first and set those healthy boundaries. Is there something that you're doing too much of that's in your life that you need to get rid of? For me, that was alcohol. Sometimes, there's more things to addiction than just alcohol. There's social media, there's like online shopping, there's a plethora of things. So is there something I need to eliminate from my life to become a better athlete? But where can you find me? At www.justinbrien.com. I coach people in a 12-week program called the Stronger You Project, where we look at becoming your best version, your strongest version. You can find me at JustinBrien19 on Instagram, or just Justin Brien on my Facebook. Reach out, send me an email, justin@justinbrien.com. Let me know what you thought about this episode. If you have any questions, or if you'd even like to work with me, I do travel to speak on mental health and addiction and workplace wellness, if you're looking for a speaker.
Yep, and I'll link to all of those down in the show notes, so you can go scroll down. And while you're at giving feedback about this episode, you could do that in the form of a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser.
Perfect.
So thanks again, Justin.
Thanks for having me, man.
So that's it. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Justin Brien. And again, you can find all of his different links down in the show notes. And I'll ask again if you could just share this with a friend if you enjoyed this, or share any of our past episodes with a friend. Let them know why you enjoy listening to Substantiate, and hopefully you can have them become a fan also. And yes, there's that feedback form. That helps out a ton. Any 5-star reviews in Apple Podcasts, much appreciated. Thank you. And yeah, social media links, again, also down in the show notes at SubstantiatePod. And come back next week for the beginning of a new type of episode. We are going to start Season 3 of Substantiate, which is going to last the entire summer. We're not having any break between Season 2 and 3. We're just going right into it, and I'll explain more about that next week. But in the meantime, go have an amazing week, and you'll be right back here with me, Season 3, next Wednesday. Thank you for listening to this episode of Substantiate. The best way to help support the show is to, number 1, tell your friends about Substantiate. That is the number 1 way to support us. The second way is to leave us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. Number 3, follow us at SubstantiatePod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Hello, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
And we're hosts of Capes on the Couch, the podcast where comics get counseling.
Superheroes don't always get to go home happy. That's where we come in.
We offer psychiatric and mental health analysis of comic book characters.
So check us out at capesonthecouch.live and across all social media platforms at Capes on the Couch.